Fox News Podcasts presents the Bret Baier Podcast with Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier.
Across the board, President Trump and the federal government have dodged accountability and dismantled the institutions responsible for checking that corruption and overreach that they're committing.
I have this guy Pritzker is a very weak governor. Let me be nice. I'm going to be very nice. He's extremely weak. He's pathetic. I have Pritzker get up and say how great they're doing in Chicago. They're doing very poorly.
All right, let's talk about crime, immigration, politics with Democratic Illinois Governor JB Pritzker. Governor, thanks for being here.
Great to be here, Bret.
Any reaction to President Trump there? That was just an hour ago.
It seems like I live, rent-free in his head. He talks about me all the time, just spontaneously. And all I can say is that we're having to deal with the invasion of his ICE agents, his CBP agents, and potentially of federalized National Guard who don't know anything about law enforcement. We could use help. By the way, I'd love to get help with law enforcement, FBI, ATF, DEA. We want to get gangs and guns and drugs off the streets, and we've asked for that kind of help, but instead he's talking about sending troops. Why?
Well, you have this effort to track ICE. The Illinois Accountability Commission announced today to create this public record of federal law enforcement agents, determines how to collect testimony, hold hearings, interview individuals, record what could be used to pursue justice and accountability on them, right?
Yes.
So what do you say to the people who look at that and say, ICE is taking bad guys off the streets of Chicago?
Listen, it's great. Go get Tren de Aragua. That's not what happened. Remember, they attacked a building with 130 people in it, and they got a couple of gang members. That's what you ought to do, by the way. Go after them, not the 130 people. Instead, they took everybody out of the building. They zip-tied the kids. They took some of the seniors and put them into U-Hauls for hours. And many of them U.S. citizens, legally in this country, others. And they instead detained, literally dozens and dozens of people for hours. That is not the way you do law enforcement.
But do you believe any illegal immigrant charged with or convicted of a felony should be deported?
I think they ought to take the violent criminals and get them out of my state and get them out of the country. I absolutely believe that, but that's not what they're doing. They said they were going after the worst.
You don't help them because you're a sanctuary state, right?
No, we do. If you bring us a judicial warrant, we will bring you all kinds of help on the ground to go get the bad guys. That's what we want. We want the bad guys off the streets. What we don't want is for people to get racially profiled. That's what's happening right now. They're racially profiling people who are black and brown, and they're demanding their papers. Are you a U.S. citizen? Prove it. Now, Bret, I bet you're not carrying something that says you're a U.S. citizen right now. But I don't think Americans should have to do that.
Earlier this year, Chicago police charged 2 illegal aliens with felony murder in the killing of a 63-year-old man who was found tied up in his home. They were from Ecuador and Venezuela. Both were caught and released at the Texas border by the Biden administration in 2023. One of the suspects was in custody, had been arrested in Chicago on January 12th for trying to lure children, but was released into the community with ICE's detainer request ignored due to sanctuary policy. Like, when somebody looks at that and says, that can't be a good thing.
Bret, every person that gets held, every person that for probable cause, with due process, every person has a trial or has a hearing, and it gets determined whether or not they should be held in a jail cell or whether they get bail, right? Those things have happened all over the country. And I can tell you, at least in Chicago and in Illinois, when someone is determined to be a danger to the community, they are held. That's how it works. Now, did a judge make a bad decision? Maybe so. But to pick out the situation of one immigrant, I bet you could find U.S. citizens all across the country who committed a crime who also get out and then they do something bad.
You were in an interview and you called ICE agents and looking like they're acting like Nazis after the Holocaust. Take a listen.
What I'm saying is that this is how authoritarian regimes do it. They create these kind of fake ideas that there's an enemy out there and it could be sitting next to you at one of these tables.
This kind of language, fascism, Nazism, it's permission. We went to war to destroy the Nazis, to overcome fascism. It's permission. It's a slippery slope to violence, and it's unacceptable. And it's pervasive on the left. We saw that pre-Charlie Kirk. We saw it post-Charlie Kirk's terrible assassination, and it needs to stop, and the Democrats are guilty of not standing up against it.
How do you respond to Senator McCormick?
What I can tell you is that Alberto Pinochet was an authoritarian. There are lots of authoritarians that I could point to. It happens that I know best because I helped build a Holocaust museum sitting next to Holocaust survivors about what the Nazis did in those early years.
No, I understand that.
I'm not talking about the Holocaust. I'm talking about what they were doing, taking away people's rights, arresting people, asking them for papers. Early on in an authoritarian regime, wherever it is in the world throughout history, this is what happens. It's the beginning of something very bad for our country, especially a constitutional republic.
To his point, in this environment, you're demonizing ICE agents. If some ICE agent gets killed, and we just saw an assassination attempt down in Dallas, isn't that not something that we should be really talking about like that?
The thing that we're demonizing is when ICE agents aren't following protocols. They aren't acting like law enforcement should act. They're instead literally racially profiling. We've seen it. All you have to do is go online and look at some of the videos. Just to be clear, because I think many people that are listening maybe haven't seen that before.
You don't think you're painting with a broad brush of all the ICE agents that are doing their job?
No, we're saying that if you're an ICE agent and you do these things, we think you ought to be held accountable. And yet no one in Washington, no one above them, no supervisor, no inspector general is holding anybody accountable. There literally haven't been any suspensions or firings for the terrible things that they've done, literally grabbing people, tackling them when they're U.S. citizens and have done zero
You've
wrong.
referred to ICE as Kristi Noem's thugs. Would you be willing to do a ride-along with ICE in Chicago to get a better understanding about what they do and what they deal with?
I can see what they do on the streets of Chicago. And
are there any ICE agents that are good? ICE agents that are good?
Of course. The problem is who's holding the bad ones accountable? Because the bad ones, frankly, are the ones that we're seeing all the time. And then you have Bovino on Fox News saying, oh, they're very professional. They're doing everything by the book. That's absolutely not true. Anybody who can see, who has two eyes, can see that they are breaking the rules, breaking the law. Indeed, they're breaching the Constitution, the First, Fourth, Fifth, and the president is breaking the 10th Amendment. I mean, they're attacking the Constitution. People need to be held accountable.
We'll continue right after this.
Why does Chicago have the highest murder rate of all the big cities?
Well, we are not in the top 30 in terms of our murder rate. Indeed,
well,
our murder rate it has been cut in half over the last 4 years, and every year it's gone down by double digits. And if you look at all of the violent crime over the last 4 years,
here's a map.
They've all gone down.
Most U.S. cities, 17.47 per 100,000 population. Chicago is number one over Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix, Los Angeles, New York, and San Diego.
What I'm explaining to you
now
is
you're
when
talking
you want to
about
fight
violent
crime. Look, you can pull statistics up.
No,
I can
these are
too.
murders.
I'm explaining to you that our murder rate has been cut in half. And very importantly, Bret, and you got to hear this, very importantly, we've been doing the things that are necessary to bring crime down, right? We've invested in community violence interruption. We've invested in police. I've added more state police than any governor in quite a long time. It's very important that we do both of those things and more to invest in our communities so that we bring crime down. We're doing that. You know who's doing the opposite? Donald Trump. He is literally taking away money from community violence intervention, and he's defunding the police. He has moved FBI, ATF, and DEA out of the agencies that serve Chicago and those departments, those locations, and he's moving them into ICE and CBP. That's not what we need.
If you hear from your constituents, your residents, and they say, ask for help. If help is being offered, ask for help.
I have. And I do. And I regularly say, you've heard me, anybody that's listened to me has heard me say, and I believe this is absolutely necessary. Bring us FBI. We want to go after the gang members. Bring us DEA. We'd like to get more drugs off the streets. Fentanyl is killing too many people in Illinois. I want to point out, by the way, in the state of Illinois, we are 19th safest. I'd like to be number one or number two safest. 19th safest, not 50th, not 45th, 19th. We're doing a good job of addressing crime and bringing it down steadily, doing the job but it's not going to get brought down by bringing soldiers onto the streets of American cities.
I want to talk some politics. We talked about the environment and how people are talking. Should the Virginia Attorney General nominee, Jay Jones, drop out of the race over those texts that have been the focus of this race.
Yeah, I think that the text that I think everybody points to, he's apologized about that. People make mistakes. They do.
So he shouldn't drop out.
It's one thing if someone's doing it repeatedly, right? If you're making comments repeatedly that are, like that no doubt that was an offensive thing to write.
You've donated $20,000 to Jay Jones' campaign.
Yeah, that was before anybody saw the text, but it doesn't matter. The point is, if he wasn't apologizing about it, if he didn't feel bad, and if he hadn't stood up and said, this is not how I really feel, I think everybody says, things along the way, particularly in politics, when you're getting attacked, that you probably shouldn't have said.
Has the Democratic Party become too extreme? Do you think that the focus of your party is on the far left? Have you endorsed Zohran Mamdani in New York, for example?
The focus of our party is not on the far left. The focus on our party is standing up for Americans' constitutional rights. That's what I believe. That's what most Democrats believe. I believe that Zohran Mamdani won his election because he talked about one very vital issue to the American public, and that's affordability. And that's what we all ought to be talking about. But unfortunately, Donald Trump every day is attacking our American cities. We've got to stand up for democracy. But we've also got to, talk about, and I have done this, eliminating the grocery tax in the state of Illinois, making sure we're bringing down taxes for small businesses. So these are all things that I think really matter to folks at the kitchen table every single day.
You say standing up for the democracy. Here's what you told Stephen A. Smith. You say, he asked, so you think that the President of the United States is going to try to steal an election? That's what you're saying. And you say, oh, this is a guy that tried to steal the election back in 2020, and he would do it again. Yeah, I think he's proven that he's willing to do that. There are many Democrats who pointed to Donald Trump before the 24 election, saying he was challenging the integrity of the election by saying almost exactly what you're saying about him now. Why do you think he's going to steal the election?
What I'm telling you is you can just look back in his own history, back to 2020, after the election, when he claimed fraud, he claimed it had been stolen from him. And he and Michael Flynn discussed, and Michael Flynn very publicly talked about, maybe we should use troops and go in and seize the ballot boxes and count the votes. You don't think Donald Trump heard that and thought maybe that's a good idea? And here we are. He's sending troops onto the streets of American cities, into blue states in blue cities, and he's calling it about crime, but that's not at all what it's about.
And you don't think by saying this now that you are somehow challenging the integrity of the next election?
No, he is challenging the integrity of the next election, but yes, he is challenging the integrity of the next election by sending troops into our cities. That's what I believe this is about. It isn't about fighting crime. He said he's going after the worst of the worst. That is not what they're doing. They are literally going after black and brown people because of the color of their skin.
The worst of the worst. If ICE is getting the worst of the worst off the streets, is that a good thing?
Yes, anybody that they get that is worst of the worst is a good thing, of course. But you remember, they're bragging about the fact that, 60% of the people that they're stopping have done something wrong. 40% are being held, detained. These are U.S. citizens, people legally in this country. And I mean, think about that. Do you think we should just round up the usual suspects? If we hear there's a murder in some area, should we just get everybody who lives in that area out in the street? We'll detain them. We'll zip tie them. We'll grill them and find out which one of them did it. That is not the way justice works in this country. That's not the way the Constitution is supposed to operate.
The economy, Illinois, property tax, most recent was 23, but it's the highest in the U.S. Gas tax, second highest. Corporate tax, third highest. Sales tax, it's down to 13. Do businesses want to stay in Illinois, and do you think that the Illinois economy is doing well?
Let me say this. When I took office from a Republican governor, everything was going the wrong direction, exactly what you're talking about, right? So when I took office, we had to address all of these things, and we've begun to and are addressing them. Indeed, today, I'm very proud to say, we were awarded by Moody's our 10th credit upgrade as a state since I took office. Right before I took office, and for almost 20 years before, 26 credit downgrades. So we're moving in the right direction. And indeed, we've attracted more businesses to the state of Illinois. We have more people employed in the state of Illinois than ever before. Things are going the right direction. I can't solve all the problems at once, that's for sure. I can tell you that with regard to property taxes, the biggest problem is most of your property tax bill comes from paying for schools. And guess what? The state, before I took office, got out of the business of paying for schools. So the only way to pay for them is property taxes. We're now back in it. We went from 24% of school funding coming from the state to 40%. The average state is 46%. We need to get there and beyond. That's how you bring property taxes down, and that's what I'm working toward.
Two more things. What's the best thing that President Trump has done since being in office?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, look, one thing I can say is that I asked President Biden and wrote a very public letter to deal with some of the problems at the border. We were seeing, tens of thousands of people being sent by Governor Abbott to Chicago, and we weren't getting any help really from the federal government. And it was clear that a whole lot of people coming across the border and, getting TPS or whatever. And we had an opportunity with the Lankford bill, as you may recall, something that Republicans and Democrats were rallied around to get some immigration reform. We really need immigration reform. And there was bipartisan support for that. And it would have passed, but for the fact that President Trump was opposed to it. Here's what I would say. Since President Trump has taken office, we don't have the problem that existed before with people coming across the border. What I would suggest, though, is there's one more thing he could have done. He took control of the Congress. He's got control of the judiciary. He's got control of the White House. He could
I would argue that the judiciary pushes back all the time, but go ahead.
The Supreme Court. Let's just say this. He could have proposed comprehensive immigration reform and gotten it passed. He could have done that. He hasn't done that. Why? Why does he want to send troops in? Why does he want to send ICE and CBP in? Why not get immigration reform in place that we can all rally around? Look, I like that we have borders. We need borders, right? You don't have a country if you don't have borders. But let's deal with immigration with an actual bill that Democrats and Republicans can rally around. We've seen it before. It's been done before. But it's been 40 years. Let's finally do it.
Are you considering running for president?
I'm running for re-election as governor. I appreciate the question. I'm always flattered by that question. But honestly, I love the state of Illinois. I'm going to do whatever's best for the state of Illinois.
Last thing. The dealer has a 2. You have a 16.
That's the debate everywhere. No, I mean,
Were you proud or embarrassed of announcing $1.4 million of
Oh, neither one. It was just I did what anybody would do if you're telling the truth, right? You pay your taxes. I got really lucky. That's what happened. It's like somebody who won the lottery. You get really lucky. You're going to pay your taxes on it.
Governor, we appreciate you coming by and taking tough questions and answering them. We'd like to have you back.
Thank you. Good to see you, Bret.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.